This is Public Report, a public affairs presentation of KTBW. The opinions expressed in this program does not necessarily reflect the views of the Trinity Broadcasting Network.
Hello everyone, I'm Tina Lombard and thank you for joining us here on Public Report. Today we are going to be talking about a very important issue, and I have two guests I'd like to introduce you to. To my immediate right, I have Leilani Miller, and she is from Millennia Ministries. Thank you for joining us today. And then to her immediate right, we've got Mr. Phil Martin, who has been here before, and he is from Compassion to One. Our subject today we're going to be talking about is sex trafficking. And if you have any young ladies in your household between the ages of 11 and 16 or above, please bring them to your television right now because we're going to be going over some very important issues. So thank you for joining us. Great. So Phil, let's go ahead and start with your organization and what you do.
Yeah, our organization, we're called Compassion to One. And we've been around now for about 6 years. And what we do is a number of different things, but primarily trying to raise awareness about the issue. So we're going into schools and churches and places in the community to try to help just bring this to the conscience of people. We also conduct trainings for law enforcement, social service workers, first responders, and other groups throughout the community. We help with the areas of legislation, demand reduction, services, aftercare. We really work on a variety of different projects and terms.
Well, can you tell us really quickly, can you just define sex trafficking?
Sex trafficking would constitute force, fraud, or coercion on a federal level. And so really any time that primarily girls, but also there are young boys who are trafficked as well. And basically when someone is owned as a commodity to be used to make money on behalf of someone else, also used in labor trafficking to help produce goods and services. So it constitutes a sense of ownership over another individual.
Okay, so it is sex trade.
Absolutely.
Actually, just cold and as it is. So your organization is something that helps training, it helps people, there's resources to combat this.
Absolutely.
Great, great. And so over here we have Millennia Ministries, and Leilani, tell us a little bit about your organization.
Yes, we're a transitional house or safe house, and we house women that come out of the sex trafficking trade. Okay. Also women that are victims of domestic violence or women that have addiction issues. Great. We house them for up to 15 months, 2 years, and help them re-establish their lives and get the nurturing and the healing that they need when they come out of sex trafficking.
Okay, great. So basically today we just want to kind of show what's going on as far as sex trafficking is concerned and try to show there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Yes. If we educate ourselves correctly and work as a force together. So tell us a little bit about what you see, what your profile is. Who is your typical victim?
Yeah, you know, mostly it's girls who come from at-risk situations, so they come out of a place of domestic violence, you know, sex abuse, maybe when they were younger, they are teen runaways, they have substance abuse, or they fall from the foster care system. So there are girls who usually come from at-risk situations, and they're typically between the ages of 11 to 16 years old here within the United States. And the reason that they're that age is because these guys, they want someone who's young, someone who's vulnerable, and when they look at these girls in terms of a product and as a commodity. So just like you'd buy anything as a product from the store, that's how they view these girls. So they want someone who is a particular age or maybe a specific ethnicity or a certain body type because he knows who he's trying to provide to, who the customer is. Right. So it can be girls typically between that age here in the States. Overseas, it's much younger. Right. So we see them, you know, as young as 4 and 5 years old in some cases. So those are typically who they are.
Well, as a mother, it's very concerning. You hear somebody as young as 11 years old or 12 or 13. So are these typically girls that are going to school with my children?
Yeah, they're girls who are going to school. They're in our churches. You know, they're involved in sporting activities, and it's also, like I mentioned, they come from at-risk situations as well. So girls who have just had an unfortunate set of circumstances growing up, nothing that they ever asked for. Maybe they made some bad decisions along the way, just like anybody else, but typically it was handed to them, and they just have no way out.
Well, how are these girls approached?
typically what happens is that a guy, say for instance a girl is a waitress at a restaurant or something like that, then the guy will just become a customer. So he's going to come in, he's going to buy his meal, and he's just going to start asking her questions just about her life. Tell me about your family, tell me about where you go to school, tell me about your friends, what you're going to do for a job, maybe what's your dream job when you grow up. And so she's never tipped off that there's another hidden agenda in the background somewhere.
And so this could be somebody in the street too. If you're just walking down the street, the girls are out for a day in Seattle walking around, they can be approached there too.
Absolutely, on the streets, in the malls, in the movie theaters, at truck stops, rest areas, various places throughout our community. And what he's doing is he's trying to take an inventory on vulnerable situations in her life to figure out where she was abused or where she was neglected and abandoned, where she abused drugs or alcohol for the first time and kept using after that. Because what he wants to do is find that area of vulnerability. And then what he does from there is he removes her from a familiar situation and invites her to a party and says, hey, why don't you bring your friend along? And so she'll bring her friend, and because these guys see this as a business opportunity, what they're going to do is they're going to rape this girl. And also he's going to have a reinforcement like a brother or an uncle or someone close to him. And he's going to tell her, I own you and I want you to know that I own you. So this guy's going to rape you too. And then she's going to get raped again by this other gentleman. And from there, she's in street prostitution. She's online on Backpage.com or Craigslist or an escort service website somewhere. And usually within the first, especially if it's online, within the first 10 minutes, there's a guy knocking at the door.
That's very scary to hear. You were telling me earlier that this is a 48-hour turnaround from when a proposed pimp or what have you meets a young lady and she's on the street?
It can be as quick as 48 hours, but
Okay.
typically it's about 2 to 3 weeks
Okay.
is probably an average, but it can also be longer, just depends.
Okay, so a lot of the girls, they feel safe because they have their iPhone or their smartphone with them. They think they can just call mom, dad, or whoever when they're in a tight pinch. What happens if they have an iPhone? Is that protection?
Yeah, I would say that, parents or coaches or people that interact with kids on a daily basis, they're very limited on their information for how they give students or their children, ways to protect themselves.
Right.
And so what these guys do is that they take advantage, of these girls. And so while it's a good idea to have your phone so you can make a phone call, a lot of times that's taken from them in a certain situation so that she can't call for help.
There you go. That's
And so technology can be a great thing, but a lot of times it's taken from them and it's only used in terms of relating to clients.
Now you're talking about that there is training offered through your organization, that parents can get training, and you're also trying to get training within the schools?
Yes, exactly. So people can go to our website, compassion2one.org. They can go there. They can request a training. And a lot of what we do when we go to certain places like schools or churches and places through the community, we get a lot of interest. So people actually request it there live at the event. And then we come back later and set a date and do that. So, they can request it there as well.
Because it's very important, because once the girls are trapped into the sex trafficking, it's very hard for them to come out and for the parents to find them. Is that correct?
Yeah, they typically won't come out on their own because they're psychologically manipulated, physically, emotionally, in every way possible. And so they're not just going to come out and choose to leave. They can't. There are too many threats on their life or on their family's life. They are victims now of substance abuse, a lot of different terms and conditions. So they're completely desensitized to their environment. This guy, even though from the outside looking in, we can see this as abusive behavior, to her, this guy loves me. He's buying me things, and he's my provider. He's my dad in a sense.
He's my hero. He's my love. He's everything that was deficit in their life prior.
Exactly.
And so if you do get these girls and they're arrested, or they're, for whatever reason, they're taken off the street and they're getting into some type of law enforcement or first responders, you can get them over to a safe house.
That's usually the goal.
Okay.
And so we know a number of providers, whether they're direct service. So direct service, at least in my definition, has to do more with their immediate care. So their medical attention, their educational opportunities, their food and clothing, educational, that has to do more with direct service. Aftercare would deal more with housing, more with creating a sense of family.
Great.
Because a lot of times these girls don't have families, or their families sold them into a life of prostitution to become providers for their family because their economic structures are so poor.
So, yes.
So that is the goal, is to get them into services once they're rescued, and really to try to find out information about the person who trafficked them so that we can turn that over to the police and get him prosecuted.
Okay, so we've transitioned over to somebody like Leilani's organization. So Leilani, tell me what you do when you receive a young lady.
Well, we really began to develop their trust.
Okay.
and nurture them, let them know that they're safe, that no one is going to hurt them, okay, that we're not going to judge them. We try and get them into counseling. Get them into some type of recovery service if they need it. We really take some time to assess really what they've gone through, how they got into the sexual trafficking, whether it was a parent or whether it was a pimp. And then we, try and match them up with a mentor.
Right.
Someone that has come out of sexual trafficking themselves and understands what the girl is going through.
Right.
And we go from there, enroll them in school.
Great.
Enroll them in their counseling and really assess what their skill sets are.
Now, how's their success rate as far as women entering and exiting your program?
They've been pretty successful.
Wonderful.
It's a pretty young program. We sometimes do have girls that repeat, because sometimes, they
fall
get
back in.
scared. They get scared. But for more times than not, they go on and they continue their education, and they go on to college, and they become dental assistants or MAs or veterinarian assistants.
Yes, but there's definitely between meeting a pimp and getting off the street, there is a way to get back to the normal world with organizations such as yours.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great, great. So what is the age? Because you were telling me it's going to be an older age, I would assume.
Yes.
What is the average age of people?
18 to, late 20s, 30s.
Okay, so something that happens so young in their life actually will keep persisting, so on and so forth. So how does somebody find an organization such as yours? Not just yours, because there's so many women out there. I know that one can't handle it. How do they find an organization like yours?
Word of mouth through churches, lawyers,
Okay.
police officers sometimes,
Okay.
sometimes judges,
Right.
social workers,
Okay,
a
okay.
variety of ways.
Okay, so do you also offer training?
Only in terms of self-edification, only in terms of them getting to be who God really called them to be, getting to know who they are. That's and helping them to go to school, helping them to get counseling.
Right. And what's so alarming is that you don't just take in the girls. A lot of them, you said, have babies perhaps, or they're pregnant.
Some have babies, not
Okay.
everybody.
So
yeah.
if they do have a child, it's not a disqualification. They still work them into your program.
No, it's not a disqualification. Oftentimes they might be in the system. The children
Okay.
might be in foster care, okay, because they really had no place to
Right.
live. So the
Right.
kids are in foster care. So CPS will come in and they will try to reunify that parent with that child.
There you go. There you go. So Phil, tell me, does the does the government really know the impact of this, the importance of this issue?
I think they do, and it's particularly here within Washington State. We're very fortunate. The previous Attorney General Rob McKenna, also Councilman Reagan Dunn, the Mayor Mike McGinn, and others who have actually been a pretty prolific voice for this cause. So we're actually pretty fortunate here. A lot of states don't have that access or the collaboration for these certain individuals to come and be a spokesperson at a school or in a place in the community. So I would say they're very aware of it here, and the problem right now, or what we're working with, is funding and priority.
Okay, so when we come back, we're going to be talking in our next section, we're going to be talking about more of an international scale and how that impacts us here in the United States. But we'd like to talk more about the Johns and how they affect us, how they can keep pushing the market, and what we can do as parents and as educators to set an offensive battle
Absolutely.
against this. Great. So we'll be right back. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned.
At Habitat for Humanity, why isn't a question, it's the answer. It's why we build. So that a child can live in a healthy home where they can learn and grow to their full potential. It's why we build. For families searching for stability and for those wanting to help themselves and their neighbors, it's why we build. To break down barriers and establish vibrant communities filled with hope, it's why we build. To offer families a hand up, not a handout, and to partner with them to provide a safe, decent, and affordable place to live, it's why we build. To open doors of new opportunity and the promise of a new start for a better life, it's why we build. You see, Habitat for Humanity builds so much more than houses. We build homes, communities, and hope. What will you build? Visit Habitat.org.
Thank you for coming back, and we're going to be talking again. Once again, first of all, I have Leilani Miller, and she is from Millennia Ministries to my right. Then we have Mr. Phil Martin, and he is from Compassion to One. And you'll also see they also have websites that we're going to be showing you here. So please, if you want more information, please do go to those websites. So Phil, we're going to be talking more of an international scale. Tell us how internationally sex trafficking is entering our borders.
Yeah, it's a little bit different when you take a look at sex trafficking, or just human trafficking really, overseas. What you see is more of a means of survival. And so a lot of these moms, particularly like a place like Thailand, for instance, the women go and they prostitute themselves to make money for their families because their economic structure is so poor and the men aren't working. Or they sell their own kids because the economic structure is so bad. So they sell their own kids as income generators to provide for their families.
Well, something I see that on TV a lot. I see a lot of documentaries about the young kids as early as 4 or 5 years old, involved in prostitution overseas. But then they're brought here to the United States. How does that happen? How do they enter our borders, and how does that able to?
Can happen in a few different ways. One can just be transport, so they come over in shipping containers or airplanes, or they are underground tunnels. There can just be those types of things. There's a lot of corruption, so different border patrols, police are paid a cash incentive to keep quiet, and they're brought over the border. So that can happen. Typically, though, what happens is that there's usually an ad online on a website or a website that's created to say, here's a modeling job, or here's a nanny position, or something like that. And so they take that opportunity because just the chance of living a better life in the States is much better than what I have in my hometown.
Okay.
So they fall prey to that.
And that's advertised in their country.
That's advertised
in their country.
It's just online.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Advertised by people in the States.
All right.
And they're able to see those advertisements if they're just doing a Google search for a nanny job or for something of that nature.
Okay, so they come over here on the pretense they're going to be getting an employment opportunity, but then they're just put right into sex trafficking. There's no way out. And what's so dangerous about this is that they don't have the resources locally.
Absolutely. And, too, for people that are international, their documentation's taken from them, their passports, their identity, their identification. And so that's something, too. There's a lot of corruption. A lot of times they're told that the police are bad, so if you go to the police, then you'll be deported back to your own country. So there's a lot of different things in terms there. So they're not going to run. They're not going to try and go talk to someone once they're involved in the lifestyle, because the risk of something else happening or me going back to a place where I wasn't happy may be in effect.
So when these places are raided and you do see these women who have no documentation and they are obviously not from this country, do they go to safe houses like Leilani's, or where do they go? What happens to them?
I believe that's obviously the goal, is to get them those resources, but we have to get them there. We have to get them documentation, and we have to be able to prove who they are. And so that's the thing. Or there's T visas that we try to have them qualify for.
What is that?
So it's just a visa.
Okay.
And so we try to get them that, and so they're able to then qualify for services. We can clearly identify who they are, and that's the goal, is really to provide them those services.
So if you find a young lady at 17 years old and she is from, overseas, I mean, does she stay in prison until you find a way out, or what does she do? Does she go to some type of a provider, do you know? Or?
Usually the goal is that she will be arrested for prostitution in the States, because prostitution is a crime.
Right.
And so a lot of times she will be in jail. Usually she's not there very long, maybe 24 to 48 hours. And really what they're trying to do is they're trying to just get more information about her and also about the person who had trafficked them, just to try to prosecute him and get her resources.
Okay.
So that's usually the goal.
Okay.
Particularly like people in the foster care system, the goal is to reunite them automatically with their families.
Right.
That's not always the case here. So sometimes the goal is to reunite them if that's a possibility, or get them into a direct service of some kind, or into aftercare such as Millennia Ministries.
Okay, very good. So do you see people from an international scale, or?
Not often. Not
Okay,
often.
okay.
I have had a case or
Okay.
so with an international scale where there was some prostitution in Kuwait and they came here.
But,
They had children, but not often.
But certainly it's something they can benefit from.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good, very good. And I'm wondering, as far as fighting this, would you both agree that the Johns are something, it's also a front that you can fight? If you can get the Johns, or you were saying earlier that Johns are more victims also?
That's my personal belief. I know others
Okay.
would share that and some may not.
Okay.
But yeah, these are everyday guys like we talked about. So they're doctors, lawyers, even church pastors in some cases, business people.
Okay.
And so what we really have to do is try to figure out where the breakdown happened for them in their life. So where were they addicted to drugs? Where, were they exposed to pornography at a young age? Where were they first abandoned? When did divorce come into an effect? Something that would be a series of events or a one-time event that was significant enough for them to question their own identity and then to have to fill those voids and those needs in some other manner. That's really, I think, the issue in terms of just dealing with prosecution and alternatives for these men. It's really dealing with those issues that have been in their life for an extended period of time, and that's what drove them to buy a girl and to own a girl.
So if you were a John, or if you knew somebody who was a John, and they needed help, like I was saying earlier, it's not something that you can just call up and say, okay, I need help, this is the type of help I need. Where could they find resources to help themselves to get them out of this addiction?
Yeah. I'll talk about one specific campaign that we did a couple years back, and we basically created a poster campaign, and it was centered around the Olympics up in Canada a couple years back. And so we had put a couple of phone numbers on there. So if it was a girl that needed services, or if it was a guy who was looking for a way out, there's a number that he could call, and then we would relay him to services, and then we translated that into different languages because there are so many different countries represented, obviously, in the Olympics. So that's one thing is that we attempted to try. But really, it comes from a referral from a police officer, from a particular local church. If they happen to be in a church, sometimes they can provide those resources. And one thing that exists in some states, and what we're trying to get past here in our state, is John schools.
Okay.
So this is used to be an alternative for men to first admit that what they did was wrong, get them to see that their behavior is unacceptable, and but then take them through a process of recovery, getting them to heal on the inside,
Right.
just like we would with these girls, because that's really the goal, is they have to value themselves before they're going to value others.
Right, so if we can get the Johns off the street and stop buying, then the supply will go
Absolutely.
down. Okay, so that's how you're fighting in both cases. So tell me, Leilani, these young ladies that go into your system, do they talk about their Johns, or what do they see their Johns as? How do they talk about them?
Well, at first they see them as boyfriends and as rescuers.
Oh,
And-
really?
yeah. Oh, in the beginning, yeah.
Okay.
And then they began to see that that is not love, that is not rescue, that's bondage, that's captivity. They've been really used and abused and mistreated. And so we really give them a clearer picture of what love really looks like. God's love does not look like that. It
Doesn't
doesn't
look
hold
like
you
that.
in bondage and captivity.
So you're trying to say that these women, they have repeat customers in some cases, and they fall in love, they develop these relationships with them.
Well, they fall in love with their with some Johns, but with their pimps.
Oh, they fall in
yeah.
love with their pimps. Okay. So wow, so that's really curious. So Phil, how do you, if you caught a pimp, what resources or what happens to them?
Typically, one thing that we're trying to work on legislatively is heightening the penalties for them in terms of jail time, also with fines. Because right now, I mean, it's different wherever you are, but for a while the fine was pretty liminal, $20,000, $50,000, even lower in some cases. So for these guys, what you have to realize is that, for instance, if they happen to traffic a girl or a few different girls, and say they put her up in a hotel room here locally, maybe they've got 2 or 3 girls working for 5 or 6 hours, they're going to charge an average of probably $150 to $250 an hour because they're trying to make money.
Right.
And so you do that for 30 days. The girl isn't keeping any money. The guy's keeping everything. It's all tax-free revenue. And so he's a millionaire in a month.
See,
and it's
so-
all undetected.
So the penalties are just, it's not
It's a
really
slap
trying to
on the
course them
wrist.
out. Right. So what does a pimp look like?
Pimps, they can be organized crime, involved with organized crime. They can be involved with gangs. But typically, it's not the person you would see, in a Cadillac with gold chains and gold teeth. That's what you
Okay.
see in the movies.
Right.
But these are just average, everyday guys. Some are bigger, some are smaller. They pose less of a physical threat. But they take you psychologically, they take you emotionally, they take you physically, and they slowly break you down, like I talked about earlier. And once they have you right where they want you, then you're in prostitution, you're in labor trafficking, or you're in domestic servitude, where you're a housekeeper or you're a maid or a nanny of some kind. So it takes many different varieties and many different forms.
Okay.
But that's their goal, is to own you.
Well, if you could tell a parent, like within 20 seconds, what to do to train their daughter to stay away in such circumstances, what could you tell a parent to do?
I would tell them, obviously, have your cell phone. that can be a good resource so that you can make a phone call if you sense that something is suspicious. I would say to them as well, be aware of your surroundings. That's always something to be aware of. It is better to have a friend than not have a friend in some cases. So take someone with you, and don't talk to people that you don't know, that you're not accustomed to, and don't accept invites to places you're unfamiliar with.
Okay, and once again, if you're a law enforcer or a first responder or a pastor that's interested in this type of topic, they can go to your website?
They can go to our website, compassion2one.org, and you can request a training there from us, or you can request a speaker, whichever you have need of.
Yes. Well, thank you for what you do. It's very important. I hope you continue the good fight, and I hope much success to that. And Leilani, just really quick, if you could speak as one of the victims that you have housed and you succeeded, and you've gone through the program, what would she say to these young girls?
You can do it. You can become who God has called you to be. You can have a life. You can have love. You can be successful.
You can be successful. Okay. Now, they can also go to your website and...
Absolutely. They can go to our website if they need help. We can get them resources. We can put them in touch with Phil, a church counseling.
Okay. But I'm really concerned because I see law enforcement, I see the federal government, I see educators, I see that we all have a responsibility to take care of our children. This is one aspect, just as reading, as teaching them education. This is very important to guard against, so on and so forth. Tell us really quick, Phil, what's going on in the in the law as far as getting educators trained in this subject.
One particular person that we're working with right now, her name is Erin Marin. She's based out of Chicago. And basically, she was a victim of sexual abuse. So she's been traveling the country for the last few years, and her law, called Erin's Law, just named after herself, centered around sexual abuse, has passed in about 10 states. And what they did in New York was tie trafficking into their bill, which would require that educators receive training and be state mandated, not just the students, but the teachers. So we're working right now to pass that law here in Washington so that educators are mandated to receive training so that they can adequately work with the students in their care.
Okay, so if you could talk to the educators and law enforcement right now and you tell them this is important, what would you say in 10 seconds about how important this is?
I would say, obviously, it's very important. It's our role as people that service the community that we need to be aware of this. We need to be asking questions. We need to be continually doing research so that we know about what's happening, and always be involved with the people that are close to you in your life.
That's great. Okay, thank you. Leilani, thank you also for what you do. And just really quickly, in like 20 seconds, could you tell if there's a pastor or somebody who wants to volunteer for your organization or an organization such as yours, tell them what they can do in like 10 seconds.
Get in touch with us on our website. Or give us a call. And they can come in and mentor, they can come and teach a Bible study, they can do transportation, they can just really show the love of Christ to these girls.
Okay, they can reach out. Could they perhaps reach you and find out how to get started? You can at least point them in the right direction?
On the website or the phone.
Okay,
Give us a call.
Great. So, when you come back, I hope you do come back again. That we just touched the tip of the iceberg with this, and I hope that we got some attention. So will you join us once again?
I'd love to.
Okay. Okay, great. Anyways, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that you go to these websites and you visit and you can do your part in getting sex trafficking off the street. Once again, my name is Tina Lombard. Thank you for joining Public Report.
You've been watching Public Report, a public affairs presentation of KTBW. The opinions expressed in this program does not necessarily reflect the views of the Trinity Broadcasting Network.